The diner clock ticked past midnight, its faint echo lost beneath the sizzling of the grill and the low hum of a jukebox playing forgotten songs. Rain hammered against the windows like angry fists, and the neon sign outside flickered weakly, casting a red glow over the worn linoleum floor. Behind the counter stood a young waitress named Sarah Bennett, her pale hands trembling slightly as she poured coffee for a group of bikers who had stopped by to escape the storm. Her eyes, though tired, carried something deeper. Terror. That kind of terror that sits heavy in the chest and never quite leaves. She kept glancing toward the window, every small sound making her jump. Because outside, just beyond the rain-streaked glass, a shadow waited. A man watching her. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, that people deserve protection, and that goodness can rise from even the most unexpected places, then pause for a moment, like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bike Diaries, and tell us in the comments below, where are you watching from tonight? Because this story might just restore your faith in humanity. Sarah had been working at that old roadside diner for nearly 3 years. Life hadn't been kind to her. She came from a broken home, where survival meant staying invisible, where her voice was never heard and her needs never mattered. By 21, she had learned the art of existing alone, of taking up as little space as possible, of never asking for help because help never came anyway. Her job barely covered rent for a tiny apartment above a laundromat, but it gave her something. Purpose. Independence. A reason to keep going, or at least it used to, until he started showing up. The man's name was Ryan Kowalski, a local construction worker who had once asked her out. She had politely declined, her voice soft and apologetic, trying not to offend him. But his interest didn't end there. He began waiting for her outside after her shifts, following her to the bus stop, sending texts she never answered. And when she blocked his number, the messages turned into threats, anonymous emails describing what he wanted to do to her. Photos of her apartment building sent from unknown numbers, the sound of someone trying her doorknob at 3 a.m. Her coworkers told her to call the police, but she had tried twice, only to be told they couldn't do much unless he actually did something. "We can't arrest someone for standing on a public street," the officer had said, his voice tired and indifferent. "Come back when you have proof of a real threat." That night, as the storm raged on, Sarah felt that familiar ice spreading through her veins. Ryan was there, outside in the rain, standing across the road under a broken streetlight. She could see the glow of his cigarette, the way he shifted his weight, watching the diner. Watching her. She tried to focus on work, tried to steady her breathing, but the panic kept clawing at her throat. Then her eyes met, someone else's. A man sitting alone at the far end of the counter. Big, broad-shouldered, his black leather jacket worn from years on the road. The patch on his back was unmistakable. Hell's Angels. The skull and wings that made most people cross to the other side of the street. His name was Jack Hammer Morrison, a man whose reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning. To most people, he looked like danger incarnate. But that night, to Sarah, he looked like the only hope she had left. When she brought him his coffee, her voice cracked. Barely audible over the diner's noise, she whispered, "He won't stop following me." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, desperate and raw. "I've tried everything. The police won't help. He's out there right now. He's always out there." The biker looked up slowly, his eyes dark but calm. There was something in his face that surprised her. Not aggression, but understanding. Like he'd seen this before. Like he knew exactly what kind of man was standing outside in the rain. Without saying a word, he turned his head toward the window and saw the figure lurking across the street. Something changed in his expression. Not anger, but quiet, deliberate resolve. The kind of resolve that comes from men who've seen enough injustice to know when to act. He took a slow sip of his coffee, set the cup down gently, and spoke in a low voice that somehow cut through all her fear. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah, I want you to go to the back. Stay in the kitchen. Don't come out until I tell you to." "What are you going to do?" Her voice trembled. "I'm going to have a conversation," Jack said simply. One he should have had a long time ago. Sarah hesitated, but something in his eyes told her to trust him. She slipped into the kitchen, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. From behind the small window in the kitchen door, she watched. Minutes later, the bell over the diner door jingled. Ryan walked in, dripping wet, his eyes immediately scanning for Sarah. He had that familiar smirk on his face, the one that said he enjoyed her fear, that her terror was somehow his right. But before he could take 3 steps, Jack was standing between him and the counter. The biker's presence filled the entire space, tall, unmoving, silent as carved stone. Ryan tried to brush past him, his voice irritated. "Get out of my way, old man. I'm just here to talk to someone." "Not tonight," Jack said quietly. "Not ever again." Ryan's face twisted with anger. "This is none of your business. That's my girl back there." "She's not your anything," Jack replied, his voice still calm but edged with steel. "And this became my business the moment you decided to terrorize a woman who wants nothing to do with you." What happened next wasn't loud. There were no punches thrown, no chairs broken, no dramatic violence, just a quiet tension that seemed to freeze everyone in the foam diner. Jack took 1 step forward, closing the distance between them, and looked directly into Ryan's eyes. And in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding. A recognition that the man standing in front of Ryan wasn't someone who made idle threats. This was someone who had lived through real violence, who understood power and fear on a level Ryan's bullying could never reach. "You've got 2 choices," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow filling the entire diner. "Choice 1. You walk out that door right now, you delete her number, you forget she exists, and you never come within 100 yards of this place again. Choice 2. I make a few phone calls, and by tomorrow morning every Hell's Angel in this state knows your name, knows your face, and knows what you've been doing. And brother, I promise you, you don't want that kind of attention." Ryan's face had gone pale. His hands were shaking. "You can't threaten me. I'll call the cops." "Go ahead," Jack said. "Call them. Tell them the big scary biker threatened you. And while you're at it, I'll show them the photos Sarah's coworker took of you standing outside this diner every night for 3 weeks. The screenshots of the messages you sent from different numbers. The video of you trying her apartment door. See, the thing about women like Sarah is they stop trusting the system after it fails them. But they don't stop documenting. They just stop hoping anyone will care." Ryan looked around the diner, searching for support, for someone to intervene. But every customer, every trucker, every person in that room was staring at him with the same expression. Disgust. Shame. The recognition that they'd all heard the quiet desperation in Sarah's voice and done nothing. Jack pulled out his phone. "I'm going to count to 10. If you're still here when I hit 0, I make the call. And trust me, brother, once the angels know about you, your life as you know it is over. 1. Ryan stood frozen, his machismo crumbling. 2. The smirk was gone, replaced by something close to fear. 3. Ryan's hands clenched into fists, but his arms stayed at his sides. 4. Jack's thumb hovered over his contact list. 5. Ryan took a step backward. 6. Another step. 7. Ryan turned toward the door. 8. He grabbed the handle. 9. The door swung open, rain and wind rushing in. Ryan ran, not walked, but ran into the storm like something was chasing him. And maybe something was. The weight of his own cowardice, the reality that his control over Sarah had just evaporated, the understanding that he'd finally encountered someone who wouldn't look away. The diner remained silent for a long moment. Then Jack turned toward the kitchen and called out gently, "Sarah, you can come out now." She emerged slowly, tears streaming down her face. Tears of relief, of release, of something she hadn't felt in months. Safety. She tried to speak, but words failed her. Her throat was too tight, her emotions too raw. Jack simply nodded, understanding everything she couldn't say. "He's gone, and he's not coming back." "How do you know?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because men like him only feel powerful when they're dealing with someone who's afraid and alone. You're not alone anymore." Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "This is the number for a women's shelter 3 towns over. They've got lawyers, counselors, people who can help you file restraining orders that actually mean something. You call them tomorrow. Tell them Hammer sent you." Sarah took the card with trembling hands. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Jack said. He placed a $20 bill on the counter, far more than his coffee cost. "You just need to be safe. That's all the thanks I need." He turned to leave, but Sarah found her voice. "Why did you help me? You don't even know me." Jack paused at the door, his hand on the handle. For a moment, his tough exterior cracked, and Sarah saw something else. Pain. Old pain that had carved deep lines into his soul. "I had a daughter once," he said quietly. "She had a boyfriend who wouldn't leave her alone. I was in prison when it happened. Couldn't protect her. By the time I got out, she was gone. Took her own life because she couldn't see any other way out." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, a sob escaping before she could stop it. "Her name was Jennifer," Jack continued. "She was 22. And every time I see someone like you scared and alone and wondering if anyone in this world gives a damn, I see her. So I help. Because I couldn't help her, but I can help you. And every woman I help is a promise I'm keeping to my little girl." He walked out into the storm before Sarah could respond. The roar of his motorcycle soon faded into the night, swallowed by rain and thunder. But that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, Sarah found something slipped under the diner door. It was a patch, the kind bikers sewed onto their jackets. It showed a small angel with wings spread wide, and beneath it were the words, "Protected by H.A., Hell's Angels," and a note in rough handwriting. "If he ever comes near you again, you show them this. Tell them Hammer gave it to you. The angels are watching." Over the next few days, Ryan vanished. Completely. He stopped showing up outside the diner, stopped driving past her apartment, stopped existing in her world. Word around town was that he'd sold his truck in a hurry and left the state. No forwarding address. No goodbye to his job or his friends. Just gone. Sarah called the women's shelter Jack had recommended. They helped her file a proper restraining order, gave her resources for counseling, connected her with a lawyer who worked pro bono. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe, like the weight that had been crushing her chest had finally lifted. Life slowly returned to something resembling normal. Sarah began smiling again, laughing with her co-workers, making plans for the future instead of just surviving day to day. She even started taking night classes at the community college, studying to become a social worker. She wanted to help others the way Jack had helped her. Yet sometimes, late at night when her shift ended, she would hear the faint sound of motorcycles in the distance. And she would look out the window, half expecting to see that same black jacket parked under the streetlight, keeping watch, making sure she was safe. Months later, a convoy of Hell's Angels rolled into town for a charity ride, raising money for a local domestic violence shelter. Sarah was working that morning when she saw them pull up outside the diner. Among them was Jack, his presence unchanged, his gaze steady. When their eyes met, she smiled. A real smile, free of fear, full of gratitude and something close to peace. He nodded in return. No words needed. Because between them stood an unspoken truth. Sometimes the ones the world fears most are the ones who protect it when no one else will. Sometimes the scariest-looking people have the softest hearts. Sometimes angels ride motorcycles and wear leather, and they save lives not with halos but with their presence, their courage, and their refusal to look away. That night, after closing the diner, Sarah stood outside and looked up at the stars. The rain had passed, leaving the air clean and fresh. She whispered a quiet thank you to the darkness, knowing that somewhere out there, a group of men the world judged harshly were riding through the night. Not as outlaws, but as guardians of the forgotten, protectors of the vulnerable, angels in leather. Jack kept riding, state to state, town to town, carrying Jennifer's memory in his heart and her photo in his wallet. And whenever he saw someone in trouble, someone scared and alone, he stopped. Because every woman he helped was a promise kept. Every life he protected was a prayer for his daughter. Every moment he spent standing between the vulnerable and those who would harm them was his redemption. The other bikers in his chapter knew about Jennifer. They knew why Jack always took the overnight shifts when they did security for women's shelters. They knew why he always stopped when he saw someone in trouble. And they followed his example. Because that's what real brotherhood meant. Not just protecting your own, but protecting everyone who needed it. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that strength can come wrapped in leather and kindness can wear a scarred face, then please like, comment, and share this video. Help this story reach someone who might need to believe that there are still good people out there. Subscribe to Bike Diaries so we can keep bringing you stories that prove compassion still exists in this world. And before this story ends, tell us in the comments, do you believe that even the toughest hearts can hold compassion? Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for a stranger when no one else would? Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the angels we pray for don't come from heaven. Sometimes they come roaring down the highway on a Harley, wearing patches that make people nervous, carrying hearts that have known pain, and choosing every single day to make sure others don't suffer alone. Sarah kept that patch in a frame above her bed, a reminder that she had been seen, that someone had cared, that she had been worth saving. And whenever she felt afraid, whenever the old fears tried to creep back in, she would look at those angel wings and remember, she wasn't alone. She had never been alone. The angels were watching. Jack Morrison rode into the sunrise, his brothers beside him, Jennifer's memory pushing him forward. Because some debts can never be repaid, some losses can never be undone. But some promises can be kept, one frightened woman at a time, one act of protection at a time, one moment of courage at a time. And in that diner, in that small town, in that moment when a terrified waitress whispered 5 desperate words to a stranger, everything changed. Not just for Sarah, but for everyone who witnessed it. A reminder that we all have the power to stand up, to speak up, to be the person who doesn't look away when someone needs help. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand between fear and safety. One person willing to say, "Not on my watch." One person who looks at someone else's suffering and decides that today, right now, in this moment, they're going to make a difference. Jack made that choice. And in doing so, he saved more than Sarah's life. He saved her hope, her future, her belief that goodness still existed in a world that had shown her mostly darkness. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. Thank you for being the kind of person who knows that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather, ride steel, and carry hearts big enough to hold other people's pain. Share this story. Let it remind someone that help exists, that escape is possible, that they don't have to live in fear, and that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, delivered by the most unlikely angels.